So, perfect. We are now recording, and I will be here if you need anything. Please let us know what questions you have in the chat. Really, the purpose of this entire series is a conversation, a community of people who really care about each other and are developing a culture of care around career development. That's it. We know there's a lot of transitions going on. We know there's a lot of shifts. People are finding their way. People are finding what it is that really gets them going and what really drives them professionally. And we want to talk about it. We want to learn about it. We want to see how folks do that. We want to answer the unanswered questions, uncover the hidden curriculum behind a lot of this career development stuff. And so that's what we're here for. So really, this is just a casual conversation with a bunch of friends who are into the same things, and we really hope you enjoy it. So before we go any further, I am going to hand this off to LT, who's going to be our moderator for the day, and have her say a few words before we get started with our Q&A. LT, take it away.
Thank you, Heather, and thanks everyone for listening in today. So excited for this conversation. If you've been following us, Danielle or others who might be listening in, you'll see that we're mixing things up today. So previously, Heather has been in the seat that I'm in today. So I am Heather today, and Mel is me. So in that vein, Mel has been one of our producers along with Mike, and now she is stepping in front of the camera. So Mel, you are officially Kanye West today. We're gonna have some Jesus walks today. All right, so I am LT, La'Tonya Rease Miles, and I am currently a partner and director of scale and support for Career Launch, which is a social enterprise. We are not an EdTech company. However, we are third-party support. And I was previously Dean of Student Affairs at Menlo College. Before that, was Director of First Year Experience at UCLA, and et cetera, worked at LMU, which is where I met my sister from another Mr. Mel DeVivar. Mel, I am not going to go through your resume. I'll have you talk about that. I will just say about you, though, that Mel and I met and fell in love instantly, friends. I just want you all to know that. It was like a romantic comedy. Our eyes locked across the room when we were in a shared space at Loyola Marymount University, where I was serving as a faculty fellow. I did not live in the residence hall. However, I was contributing to it. And Mel was a resident director there. And we were just instant friends, truly instant friends. I was so many years ago, I can't even remember how long ago it was now. And we've obviously continued to stay in touch and to support one another. Mel and I also share an identity of being first generation professionals. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. However, I am done talking about me. Mel, this is about you today. And we want to talk about this concept of golden handcuffs and finding your career purpose in EdTech. But first, why don't you introduce yourself, friend?
Oh my God, tears, y'all. Tears are rolling. I say this every time I talk about LT. She is the first person that ever made me aware of what being first gen is. Do I part of that community? My experiences growing up being the oldest, trying to navigate being like a daughter of immigrants. She literally locked it down for me at the tender age of, how old was I? 32 at the time. And I was like, what? No, but for real, LT's a sister from another mother. And we're on this journey together, really helping each other out. So thank you for the intro. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Mike. My name is Mel. I use pronouns she, hers. I transitioned from higher education, student affairs, now into tech. So when I was in higher ed, definitely res life baby, RA, summer conference housing. I did not do front desk operations, even though I did for summer housing. But I definitely was like, cool, I could do this. Don't think necessarily thought I ever was a res lifer, but it definitely felt that way for a very long time. So I did like one year stint working actually in a nonprofit in kind of like K-6 education. And then went to grad school, Seattle U. I know there's definitely a couple people here from Seattle UA. Thanks for joining. Did my master's there, and then rolled back into residential life for a very long time, about, what is it, like 12 years. Then in 2020, actually my career pivot started, it really started when I moved from my last institution. So I was recently at the University of San Francisco, and I told myself, okay, Mel, either you have two paths. You could go do the doctorate program. I really want to do the international multi-education program, or this is your last stint in higher ed and you're going to make the leap. So in my mind already, when I moved from LA, when I met LT, I was going to move to the Bay. I was like, okay, this is like my commitment to myself. So that was like 2017. So my career journey has really manifested for quite a few years. And then in 2020, I decided to make the leap and left my job, and did a lot of soul searching, a lot of soul healing, and dived into now what I'm currently doing. So I'm a digital product designer for an EdTech company called InStride. So if y'all are familiar with a product designer, it's also called UX designer. I pretty much design all the digital interfaces. Any screen that you look at, it could be in the medical offices, it could be in your phone. You know, when you go to like boba shops and you're trying to order like your boba, that screen. I really focus on like the user or people experience through the digital universe, as you could say. So I work with product managers, engineers on the daily, Scrum masters, all those people and jazz. And yeah, I'm here to talk about my journey, and hopefully that this will inspire whoever out there to keep your soul searching. And for folks who made the leap of faith already, hope you could share, that connection as well.
Thanks, Mel. If we could back up a little bit, when you were talking about that time around 2017, and you kind of framed it as an either or pathway for yourself, what led you to that point? Because up until that point, you were going on what we might say is like the traditional path of, being in res life and an assistant director, kind of the way it's traditionally gone. But what was happening for you where you felt like you had these two options?
All right, I'm going to break it down. Okay, I have a visual. Okay, so I'm going to provide some context. Does anyone know the book Designing Your Life by like Bill Burton and David Evans? I think, Heather, there's a link in my resource list. So let me preface real quick. So I was very fortunate in higher ed that I got to go to 2 design thinking workshops. One when I was working at the University of Southern California. If folks are familiar with IDEO, IDEO.com, they help like companies, organizations use a design thinking methodology to help, the business get closer to your customers, right? And I'll go into design thinking a little bit later too. And then when I was at USF, there was this amazing opportunity in summer of 2019 where the design school in Stanford hosted every year a 4 days like immersion to work with campuses and universities to develop like a design your life academic program for college students. So I remember I was like, oh my God, can I please like try to go to this? And I worked with the team. It was actually the AVP of student life, and then the director of career services, and then me as Res Life. So then we came to this workshop. So then there's lots of like things that we did to really, help hone in how do we use a different kind of methodology to approach our programming. And they use a lot of different tools that one of them is called Odyssey mapping. So I have a slide to show you all because I'm just visual. Hopefully it makes sense. Wait, share screen. Okay, if y'all ever heard, it's called Odyssey mapping. You can all see my gamma memo. Yeah, okay. So this actually leads to finding my purpose, right? So Odyssey planning. It's this like activity where you brainstorm how you would like your life to look in the future, okay? It's like thinking about your life in 5 years. You're coming up with like, how do you create your best life for yourself? You could focus on areas such as like work, fun, love, health, whatever that is, right? So the 3 scenarios that like was given to me at the time, just remember, this is summer 2019, was like, what is like the practical way what happens if money wasn't was an issue and you had to pivot from plan one? And then what happens if money was not an issue, right? So then we all did this individually. And I'm actually gonna show you all like my map, which might be kind of hard to see. There's a lot of things going on, so I don't expect you to fully understand it. Actually, wait, let me see if I can do this full screen. 1 second, folks. Okay, it's fine. I'll just figure it out later. So the top one here is actually my practical plan. So you could see like doctorate, boxing, because I was really into boxing at that time. That little icon there is like a wedding ring. I got married that year. So this is the year where like I was okay.
Some guy, some random guy.
Some random guy, yes. Some random guy. Not really, y'all. He's not a random guy. Anywho, and so yeah, so I was like, okay, Mel, what would my life be if I just kind of took the path, right? Because when I was in Res Life, there was a lot of messages like, Mel, are you going to be a director? Mel, you're going to be like a dean of students. Are you going to be a VP? And then, you know, I had mentors, people who like, you know, supported me. I was like, yeah, like that sounds really cool. But sometimes I just wanted to do like a really good job, like in my job. Like, can I just be like the best RD I could be? Can I be the best assistant director I could be? Sure, maybe I wasn't thinking like fully ahead of me, but I'm also really like involved in other parts of my, like outside of work, right? But then, you know, like I was on this path of like, okay, I moved to USF. I'm gonna go get my doctorate, 4 years, and then, you know, go become director or whatnot. And then like the inside of me was like, oh, that like it's giving me anxiety, it's giving me like stomach cramps. And I know like that's the process of like going, like applying to any big commitment, big school, but just something didn't really feel right. So then the second path here, I actually decided to create a path of like, what would my ideal life look like if I had to pivot from the first one, right? So then this is actually product design. I would start like a boot camp certificate. I would create my portfolio. I would land a job. At the time, I wanted to work for Pinterest with one of my top companies, work remotely, give back to my community. This is supposed to be like the Filipino flag, and then travel every year. If folks know me really well, I love to travel. Y'all know that. And then, you know, that path got me really excited. And the last path was like my eat, pray, love, y'all. It was like, if money was an issue, I could go do my eat, pray, love. I wanted to build like it wasn't like a yoga studio, but like a wellness studio. And just do kind of like that path. By the way, at the end of the day, these two paths, the UX path and the Eat, Pray, Love path, just really excited me so much to where when I actually showed this, you know, this Odyssey plan, I actually got paired up with my colleague at my school. And that was terrifying because I'm like, oh no, how do I wasn't ready quite yet to tell people outside my circle, but luckily, this colleague of mine was super, super supportive. And he was like, okay, Mel, let's get you there. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe that actually happened to me in Stanford Design School. So in a sense, I don't know, LT, if I'm like answered your question per se, but I think for me was just finding my purpose, was really trying to see like what makes me hum. I've always wanted to do design. If folks didn't know, I actually graduated in undergrad with a design major, but then I got scared going to the design world at the time because I just felt design school is like super entitled. LT and I talk, your daughter's in art school right now. And I didn't see people that looked like me. I didn't see brown and Black people at the time. And I was like, I'm naturally good at education and teaching others and mentoring. So I'm gonna go that route. So I'm gonna pause there, LT, because
yeah. Let me recap. So what I heard you say is that there came a point where you were participating in this program and started to imagine different scenarios for yourself, right? And
Yep.
like Heather wrote in the chat, so great that you drew it out and visualized it. That's just critical. But then what I heard you say is like that top one was kind of like almost like the expected path. Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then, and I do remember those conversations about should it be dean of students. You just did not seem enthusiastic about that at all. But when you started to sort of allow yourself to play with this idea of following your passion, that you said, well, first thing I wrote down, you said something didn't feel right in one of those. but then something really excited you.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So can we talk a little bit more about res life in particular, right? And so there will be a little bit of overlap with some aspects of working in student affairs or higher ed. I think in any job we have, there are some things that there are some perks that we don't want to lose, but there's some specific ones in res life. And
Yes.
the
Yes,
team, yeah, me, you, Heather, and Mike, but in preparation for this, and even trying to come up with the title, landed on this idea of golden handcuffs, right? But can you talk specifically about what were some of the things in working in res life that kind of held you back a little bit from taking the leap?
Oh, totally. So okay, where do I start?
Where do you start?
Yeah, where do I start? Because it's for me, it's like, okay, so I always go back to astrology. So folks know me, I'm a Leo, very passionate, not afraid to take risks. And then my moon is like kind of how your emotions, how you express yourself emotionally. It's kind of like who are you at 3 a.m. kind of situation. So I'm a Libra. So that's a lot of people are very like harmonious. They are maybe a little bit indecisive. Once again, these are all like, don't get offended, people. But it's more just I lean on these two because I'm in conflict pretty much like very often. So wanting to take risk, but then trying to be like harmonious and like find balance at the same time. So in res life, right? Like a big part of why I stayed in res life, and this is like full transparency, was that if something has ever happened to my family, then something they have a place to come, right? And then my partner knows this. Starting to get a little emotional because it's always hard to talk to my family. So then for me, it was like, okay, so I got this job. The pay's not that good. But I got free housing, quote, quote. And y'all know it is not free housing. We work down endless nights, thankless. I mean, I was a manager and just like seeing from the ends of like the parents in crisis, the students in crisis, the families in crisis, like everything is always chaotic in crisis. But at the end of the day, I was like, but it's okay, Mel. Like you're going home to like a home that you don't have to worry about, like, I mean, we call facilities, right? But like, hey, there's like a leak in the room, and then they could just fix it, right? Even those little things where I was like, but it's convenient and it's okay. Like I have this home, right? Like housing is already hard, especially when I was living in San Francisco, y'all. Like if folks went to my apartment, it was this massive apartment, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I live here, but it still didn't feel like I just felt like I got tired of being in a sense like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I couldn't feel, I felt like in order to, I had to always worry about like, well, if I don't go, or if I don't student affairs, like what about housing? What is it like living off campus? It's like a scary thing. Even though I lived off campus for one job, I feel like it was the unknown of off campus was so hard for me to grapple that it's like, well, I'll just stay on campus because it's comfortable, right?
Definitely.
And there's that, and then like the benefits. I mean, the whole like you can match 10%. I was like, not a lot of jobs will do that. However, though, I really thought about it because it's 10% of your current salary that you make. So then in tech or in another company, they'll match you 3 to 6%. Sometimes it could actually outweigh, because it'll outweigh like your contribution, because it depends on how much you make in your take home, right? Or was it your gross? I think it's your gross, right? So though I got so stuck on like, oh, but it's 10%, like that's like a really good percentage, but then it was only 10% of my little paycheck,
low salary. Right.
Yeah. And I had to have my my best friend break it down to me. He also left higher ed. He works for corporate. And he was like, don't get so stuck on that. And also the last part was the hardest thing was, y'all, when I signed up for my retirement, I didn't know about the whole rollover situation. So my partner and I actually worked at the same school. And then I think he started like a month later after me or something like that. And then was like 6 months down. He's like, oh yeah, my retirement from the other school, rolled over. I'm like, what do you mean rolled over? I did not know this concept of rollover. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm my husband, what do you mean about rollover? And he was like, there's a form you should have filled out in HR. And I said, clearly I didn't. And so it was too late for me to roll over my LMU and USC funds that I had worked before into USF. So I was like, oh, okay, what do I do? And then, yeah, like I part of my, my motivation was to stick it out 3 years so I could be vested. Because I didn't learn about retirement until like, later on, like in my, career, and I didn't know all these like nuances to that. So it was, yeah. So I guess in a nutshell, those are like kind of the top areas where.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot. So we're gonna unpack some things.
Yes, there's a lot.
Woo. Okay. Number one, I want to point out that in a prior video, Heather and I talk about benefits, and maybe Heather, we can add a link in the chat so we do a deep dive in that. The second thing that you talked about is, and actually Lindsay put it in the chat too, this idea that you're feeling stuck, right? That you've got these so-called good benefits. And I think that often can lead to paralysis, people feeling like they can't leave, right? Without thinking of the bigger picture. You also mentioned this idea of rollover, meaning along with it, people feeling like, oh, I am going to receive these certain retirement benefits, but now I have to stay in order to maintain them. And what you and your partner were talking about is that actually, if you when you move to different jobs, your benefits can roll over with you. They can be moved elsewhere. You don't just have to stay in one spot. And I think that's a really important thing that people need to talk more about. We'd also love, if you're able to, friends, if you are having, if we can identify, what are some of your golden handcuffs? We think Mel, you were talking specifically about living on, about being vested. If other people are able to put in the chat, what are some things that you're experiencing that are about your role that are making you feel like you are being handcuffed to something? In other words, it's golden because it seems like a great benefit, but it's also keeping you tied there as well. Woo, Mel, you.
I mean, the one thing also, just to add, I remember just like the holidays. I remember, especially being at a Jesuit school, like, yeah, I mean, once again, these those little things, and this is me not knowing at the time, like about what other industries. I heard about unlimited PTO at the time, but I was like, oh, that's so far achieved. And then even just like asking myself, okay, Mel, what are the benefits even going to like a state university, right? And then like Jesuit, and then knowing there's all these things with what's that called? I'm sorry, tenure, like what when you're vested in the UCs and CSUs, there's that whole like your retirement, you get a pension. Yeah, like,
I'm not there no more, so I don't know.
Stuff like that, right? Yeah, because I mean, I felt I was trying to find myself picking. Oh my God, I didn't even talk about this. The food, the meal plan, like the meal plan. That was like, oh well, I get fed at the same time, but also, I'm gonna be real, like the food isn't always the best, healthiest as well, and so I didn't get a chance to really even focus on like making my food and controlling what I consume, because I had this, meal plan. I had like almost $5,000 meal plan, I think, for the year. So I would just kind of stack up all these benefits and make me feel like, oh, like this is okay, Mel, like you still got some good stuff. But I just got tired of tired of stacking it up.
Yeah, and I wanted to go back. You made such a good point about the 10% of your earnings. I'm doing the math of what's 10% of, let's say, a $50,000 salary versus a 6% of a $100,000 salary that continues to go up. So Mel, what was your stance on public loan forgiveness? Did that come into play?
Okay. Okay. So this actually happened. What is it? Okay. So I'm gonna do some context. Yeah, I think, what was it? Just there's an extension, some sort of like policy that came out where, oh my God, fill me in the blanks. Like you could ask for like forgiveness. Actually, first, one of my grad school classmates I saw on Facebook like maybe last year when Biden was starting to forgive loans, and she got her loans forgiven. And I was like, oh my God, good for you. Exciting, right? And I was like, wait a second, we're in the same grad program. We're in the same amount of years. And I did the math and I realized I left August 2020 and I would have hit my 10-year December 2020. And then I remember it was, this was like a few months ago, right? I remember I was like, oh my God, to like my partner, I was like, should I have stayed? Like literally I had a mini meltdown. Just like, oh no, what should I have done? Right. And then at the end of the day it was like, no, it's fine, because I made that choice, and B, well, yes, like, I mean, I have friends that are, like reaching out to me and they want to leave higher ed and then they're waiting for, their loans. I get that, y'all. Like, student debt is not a joke and it's serious. But for me, my student loans, I only had left to pay was not a lot. It was like under 10 grand. So even though that may seem like a lot, I was like, I think that's manageable, because I have to remember, Mel, like, you're also trying to aim to, like find some reliable source of income for you, and then that you could, pay that back. And of course, now we're waiting, of course, what the next steps are from the government. But I remember I was like, oh, should I have gone? Even though I knew in my heart I shouldn't have not like stayed at all. But I had to really just like, to be honest, like student loans at the time when I left higher ed was not a thing for me. I just needed to just find the smoothest transition. I left during like the start of COVID, which is not easy. And it was one of those things, well, I'll just figure it out, because as much as you try to plan your exit plan, you can't plan for everything. Like, it's just not humanly possible. And also it's important to have an exit plan, to make sure that, you and other people that depend on you, have a good solid plan for the next 3 to 6 months, however you plan that out.
Awesome.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Of course it's helpful.
Yeah. I was like,
hopefully we'll come back to the exit plan. But
yes.
let's talk about your transition, right? So once you decided to go with that sort of middle route of following your true, well, I won't say true, that's too much, but tapping into that UX design. Can you talk about like what skills or opportunities or connections help you make that transition out of res life? And I bring this up because I think sometimes people will look at some positions and think, oh, I'm in res life, I'm in higher ed. How does this translate to this thing? Well, tell us a little bit about what things helped you make that transition.
Yes. Okay. So once again, I'm going to add some context.
Yes, of course.
So, I showed you all that Odyssey map. That was like 2019, summer 20, or was that 2019? Yeah, that was summer 2019. And then that November, I took my first UX design intro course. And I actually got really burnt out from it, because at the time I was doing 2 jobs. I was an assistant director and a resident director at the same time, while taking this 20-hour week, 4-week course. So I was like, I'm gonna actually put a pause on UX design. And not a lot of people know this, but when I started my job search, I was starting my job search, I actually was going to go into L&D.
Okay, you can't be using these acronyms.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I was going to go into learning and development. So training, recruiting. Actually, she's on this call. Hi, Janet. I see you. So I met Janet Majors at a General Assembly event, which is like, oh my God, what's General Assembly? Yeah, it's like an organization that helps career changers. They host these free events, and I remember I came to an event and I walked in and sat down, and she had said, I don't know, she said something really powerful. And I emailed her a lot that night. It was just like, oh my God, thank you for, sharing your insight. You kind of saw my soul. And then,
hold on.
Yes, go ahead.
2 things.
Yes.
One, this class you took, where? Was it online?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Which class? There's multiple classes. You mean the UX class or the general class?
No. First, you mentioned the UX class. You said you were taking this class.
Yes. So I'm gonna type in the chat. It's called Design Lab.
Okay.
And I was so what I did was I tapped into my professional development funds.
There we go.
Yes, there you know it. So when I was trying to plan I was like, okay, how can I maximize? Because while I was doing, when I started, we got really excited about UX design. I tried to do all of little things in my work. Like I would doing RA training and RD training. My staff, I would take out Post-its. I even bought, I don't have it with me, but I even bought these little tools, something called story cubes. And we would try to use design thinking, methodology to try to brainstorm our trainings for our RAs. And that's what the design school from Stanford taught us, right? So I basically took all those skills I learned summer 2019 into my training that summer for my team. So I just was like, well, and then that's how I used and leveraged and, said to my manager at the time, hey, I really love what I'm learning in this design thinking. There's this online course that I want to take. I'm trying to make the connection with my work and res life. Can you support? Yeah. And he supported. He was like, yeah, go for it, Mel. Go take this class. So
okay, let's pause there, Mel. Let's
okay.
pause.
Oh my God, no.
Let the people
okay, sorry.
sit with that for a minute in terms of in your current space. First of all, I started to identify where you want to go next. And then it sounds like within the space that you were in, you were trying to make things happen, including leveraging professional development funds, right? Yes. To take a class, to incorporate into training, kind of like some simple things to sort of jumpstart yourself, but also to even begin to I know you're going to show your LinkedIn in a second. Yes. But to start to show how your current work translates, right? Love it, love it, love it. Exactly what Heather wrote in the chat. Okay, so then somehow you started talking about General Assembly. How did that come about?
Yes, okay. So I had a former RD I used to supervise. She actually introduced me to UX design. So one day she rolled up at a 101, was like, Mel, I want to use my ProDevo funds to take a course. It was actually through UC Berkeley Extension, had a UX design. I said, oh my God, yes, take it, go for it. So then she was kind of doing that. And then of course inside I was like, oh wait, if she's doing that, I want to do that too, right? And she already knew, we worked actually at another school before. So luckily we had that friendship together. So she would show me her work and her one-on-ones. And my eyes were just about to just growing. And she's like, Mel, I could see you do this too. And I was like, really? And she's like, Mel, you love design. That's something that you should look into, right? So then, I'm it helped me with dots because I know I could get very all over the place. So then it wasn't for her. And I'm gonna throw her name out because she's a really important person. Her name is Jean Marie Levy, and she was the first person that showed me what UX design was. Then I support her by helping her, just try to incorporate what she's learning in her classes into her job too. So it was a kind of this two-way kind of indirect collaboration. And then she told me about General Assembly. So I was like, what is that? And then she was looking into their boot camp program at the time. And then I think she decided to do the other one first, the Berkeley one. And then that's when I started to kind of write down what are all these other resources outside of higher ed that I should be aware about. And one of them was General Assembly. Oh, I'm sorry. And then another thing too. And then my best friend who works for corporate left higher ed before, he actually took me and my partner, he bought us a workshop ticket to General Assembly. I think it was maybe sometime in the fall of 2019. And we actually got to do a design thinking class because he also knew that I like design thinking. So I actually got to meet one of the professors from a design Stanford school. And I said, oh, I actually went to this little immersion over the summer. So kind of all of these moments that, these milestones, these moments kind of geared up. And I think for me it was really important. Another tip I just want to share with people, you got to manifest and tell people what you're interested in. You can't hold that stuff in, I'm my culture, I was taught, hold it in, keep your head down, Mel, be a busy bee, work, work, work. And, you know, meritocracy will pay off. We all know that's not like, at least in this generation per se, that was for my parents' generation. That's what my dad did. You know, my father, you know, came through the US via the US military, heads down, was in the same field for what, 40 plus years, you know, and he like worked his way up. So going back to the beginning, I thought that was kind of what my life was supposed to be, stay in the same field, work your way up. But then I wanted to break free from that. So then I started talking to people about all of this, you know, brewings, I guess you could say. And then I got some traction where I went to that, once again, that Design Your Life Stanford shindig in the summer. My best friend got me, that was the first time I was exposed to General Assembly. And then I rolled up to General Assembly in January, and then that's where I met Janet. And then,
awesome.
Yeah, I'm a positive.
So, yeah. No, that's amazing because we talked about this at the beginning of this session here. While it may be difficult to talk to someone on your job about what it is that you want to do, because that could be uncomfortable. You mentioned that, Mel, when you're doing the Odyssey, like, oh, here I am with my colleague. And so even if you aren't able to share it with someone at work, everyone, if you are looking to transition, no matter what kind of job it is, whether you're transitioning industries or just looking from one job to another, please be able to identify someone that you can, someone or some ones that you can share that with. And I want to actually pause and let you start to think about who that person can be. Who is someone that you feel comfortable enough sharing what your goals are, because you just never know how they can connect you, or who are the Janet Majors in your life, right? So that's what I want you all to start to think about. Please don't just keep it inside. Mel said that you have to manifest it, and you need to verbalize it, visualize it, to start to so the universe can start working on your behalf. Mel, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that makes it much more concrete for people. And the other thing I just want to stress again, how you hustle those professional development funds. And I know sometimes right now those funds may be getting cut, but what can you do in your space in order to help leverage, so that we talked about this in a previous conversation too, so things aren't coming out of your own pocket. Okay, so Mel, I know you have not been wanting to answer this question, but we need to get at it. I think right now, what I see a lot are people contrasting higher ed with EdTech. Like, oh, I'm tired of being in higher ed, I want to go to EdTech. I am not convinced that people really know what that means. So I'm just going to ask you, for you, what does that mean? What does EdTech mean to you?
Right. Okay. Yes. I'm once again some context. So then I was okay. EdTech was actually not my top choice, because I felt I got burnt out from. So then I did education, and then I worked with a few startups. Janet's one of them. and then I did UX design. So I started like my boot camp and did all that. And then I was building my portfolio and projects. I had done also 2 other education related projects. And for some reason, like, it was 2021, and I was having a hard time. Like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not getting excited for whatever reason it was. And then at the time I would turn to, like, actually a really good friend I met in my design program. She was working with me in one of the projects, and I had opened up to her and was like, I don't know why I feel the struggle, because it would make sense. I come from education. I should just go into EdTech. And then she was just like, well, like, what are other companies you want to apply for? You know, like, think of, she's like, what would Mel look like if she wasn't in education? And that's when I lit up. I was like, oh, I would do like femtech. So tech that focuses on like women's health, non-binary, trans health, right? Wellness tech, so then mental health. I actually thought I wanted to do even just like streaming videos or streaming companies. I did a project on on a company that does like streams Asian content. So if y'all know me, I love Korean dramas and all that. So then it was like I was managing like Mel, like once again breaking out of this like, well, you should be doing this because you have this experience, to now like finding other projects. So then I actually pivoted my projects, like my career path, and tried out other I found other work, pretty much other freelance work that was a social. I worked for like a social book loving community platform, and then I did a wellness platform with the early startup. I even worked with the agency, a design agency with a Fortune 500 company. Based on NDA, I can't share the company, but we all know it's a big company. So I did that too, because I was also really into productivity tools.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, yeah, I know.
While you're doing all these things, were you still working in higher ed, or were
no. Okay, no. So that's a whole nother segment. So then in 2020, August 2020, I left. So that was the hardest piece, was holy, I'm leaving my full-time job to now immerse myself into literally the unknown, literally not having like stable full-time check income. At the time,
that was a very big decision. Mel.
Yes, very big decision. And at the time, I just needed a break. I needed just to heal. I needed to, take off the golden handcuffs. I needed to move off campus, like I needed to focus on my marriage. Like I needed to just do these things that I would just put under the rug because work came first. And that's been my jam, like work. And I want to put Mel, work, Mel, and then family, and then work, work should, intertwine, but not overtake. So, yeah, so I did. So I left. And I had projects in line. I was working with Janet at the time. Then I did. So, and then when I did my boot camp, y'all, luckily I was blessed. I got a full ride scholarship to do my boot camp. They had a diversity scholarship. And so I remember I was like, okay, I got into this program. Now it's all hands in, Mel. Like you got to just go in the dive and do it, because I don't want to not try it. And then I turn, 5 years down the road, tell my partner, oh, I wish I would have tried it. But you must be real. It's there are times I wanted to quit. There's times I'm just like, my partner knows this, like, I don't know if I could do this, or like, am I relevant enough? I mean, that definitely, that whole term of, well, I'm not a younger, fresh out of grad program. I don't have a traditional tech background. That definitely was a barrier and made me feel like I wasn't enough. So those are, all the feels that I felt throughout that journey of like job searching and just trying to even like figure out, is UX what I wanted to do? Because I did want to mention before, I don't want to forget saying this. So yes, I thought I was going to do learning and development. But just because I was good at it in res life, does that mean I loved it? So that's something I do want to share with everyone. Yes, like there are transferable skills that you have in student affairs that will take you to many different places. However, for me, I didn't want to just do something that I was good at. I really wanted to find a new environment. I wanted to really have like a beginner's mind and just learn something completely like new skills, brand new, while I'm able to, bring in what I learned from higher ed, if that makes sense. So when I realized that, I said, Mel, don't do recruiting, don't do employee experience. You've done that already. But try to find a company that, you're able to take those experiences and then you could, bring it in and leverage that.
Okay. So a couple of things. One, I really think I'm gonna put you on the spot, especially because we have like 20 witnesses or whatnot. I totally think me and you should do like this BuzzFeed quiz of like, should you go into EdTech or not, right?
I didn't answer the question. Sorry. I didn't even get to go there. I promise I'll answer that question. Yes.
Yeah, no, seriously, we should do that. Because like I said before, I hear quite a bit people feeling like the thing that they should go to is EdTech. And like I said, I'm not entirely convinced that people really understand like what is EdTech. That doesn't mean they shouldn't change jobs, but know that there's a whole wealth of industries and fields, and it doesn't have to be EdTech. But yeah, did you want to say more about how you define EdTech? But I just know for the record, I have another follow-up question right after that.
Okay. So let me bring back, I guess, like how I define EdTech. So it's really hard, y'all. Like last night I was like, preparing and melting in my insights, like what I want to share about that. I feel, to be honest, in general, I'm gonna be honest and real. I don't even really feel like I'm a woman in tech, if that makes sense. Like, well, I guess it makes sense to me because I feel like in tech, there's still a lot of, I don't see a lot of people like me, right? I'm always, I was afraid of even going in tech in the first place because it's really dominated by white men from Ivy League schools. There's a lot of nepotism, right? And so I was like, well, why do I want to like work for, and with like this kind of group of people? Like, am I going to like vibe with them? And so when I would job search and, look at any company, it doesn't even have to be EdTech, I would look at, my first thing would be their mission and then who's in their company. Go on LinkedIn, I would stalk the people page and, I would see sprinkles of color and I'm like, damn, I don't want to be like a sprinkle. You know what I mean? Like, do they have like employee belonging councils, kind of like affinity groups, right? So I think just the idea of what like being a woman in tech, I still feel like it's pretty like also white dominated as well. And so I just kind of say like, I'm a woman that works in tech. I know it's like the same thing, but for me, it just comes down to what is the product that I'm, what's the software? What is like the goal of the software of the product that I'm, trying to do. And my goal right now is just really hone my craft into UX design, because I eventually do want to like open up and like potentially like freelance, like, or open up like a consulting company, like later on down the line, like find, find ways to keep interrupting tech, if that makes sense. Like, and that's a big reason why I wanted to do, like, I decided to go into tech, because there's so much opportunities that I could take my background in higher education, student affairs, and really help disrupt like what is happening. There's a lot of AI artificial intelligence that is messed up, right? There's a lot of like websites that are not accessible. There's a lot of things in tech that I still want to learn and do. And I'm just excited to, kind of solve those kinds of problems. But when it comes to defining EdTech, I think for me, I guess in the most basic terms, it's working like with a company where like their mission is like education driven. So then my company works with like colleges and corporations and brings those two partners together to improve workforce education. So I get really excited to work not directly with the learners, our end users per se, but we're trying to increase access to education for non-traditional students. So I have a lot of experience working with first year students, but my role is different now, right? Because I don't actually work directly with our people that we're serving. So it's a very different, it's just like, sometimes I'm like, am I really not tech? Because I'm so used to working directly with, like the customers, the students, but I know like my role is important because we're trying to create a digital experience so that people can access this educational opportunity. That makes sense. So, ask me in 3 months down the line, and kind of, see how that is. But the reason why also I found this company, once again, y'all, is through the connections. One of my really good friends I met at USC, also first gen, Latina, she was like, I've been stalking her on LinkedIn since she joined the company. And when I saw an open product design position, I hopped on a call with her and was like, hey, let's talk about this. And then she helped me get to the recruiting call. And then I took it from there. So
okay, we're gonna come back to that. We're gonna come back to that because I want you to show the people your LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
In a second. In a second. Hold on.
Okay.
So
let me get it ready.
I'm prepping you for that. So for EdTech, for everyone, we're talking about product development, design, software, those types of things. But we also, the four of us also want people to know that that's not your only pathway. Like if you come from a student serving background, you don't just have to go work for Handshake, there, etc. There and platforms like that. We were talking before this recording today. There are plenty of people with our backgrounds and degrees, and listen, me, Mel, Mike, and Heather actually all have, we have different backgrounds and experiences. I actually have a PhD in English and came up the faculty route. But you could work for a nonprofit, you could work in healthcare, we haven't even talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion work, other kinds of platforms. So don't feel like your only pathway is EdTech. Before we get to your LinkedIn, I do want to address something that I believe Lindsay had put in the chat. So Mel, you took a really big leap of faith and actually left your job, but for most people, they might not do that immediately. Can you talk just a little bit about when you're in a current role, how do you maximize your time and do some of those things that you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. So I started my my first ever recruiter call was the Friday morning at 7 a.m. right before RA training. And y'all people know out there, you don't do nothing other than train, right? So when I was working full time and also job searching, because I was getting traction. I even got a interview at Twitter. I got an interview at Pinterest. Once again, this is kind of all for like L&D, like, you know, those kind of roles. It's how do I say it? I'm just being real. It was really hard because you have to make time for it. Like I would take my lunches. So let me back up. I wrote down a list of all the people I knew who left education. Doesn't even have to be higher ed. They could be like nonprofit, K through 12, people that I just felt like I could have. It's going to be not super awkward me reaching out to them because I had to get over the whole awkward fact of like, well, I haven't talked to this person in like 10 years. You have to get over that because A, don't take it personal if they don't reply back. They're probably busy. B, how are you going to get to your next destination if you don't try? So then I wrote down this mega list of people and I would take time, lunches early in the mornings. If they're like East Coast time, I took advantage of like before work. In the evenings, I pretty much like had an interview with them. I don't know what's called interview, have a conversation and just say, hey, like, can we talk about your transition? Because the more I heard it from other people, the more like I could see myself doing it. So I had, talked to a bunch of people. There's another area. So if you're looking into like the non-technical like roles, people operations, it's a big, that's like the newer version of HR. So I kind of wrote down people who work in people ops. And then, and you just have to make time, like work with your family, work with your people that, you know, I told like my core people, like, hey, I'm going to make this transition. I'm gonna need your support. Whether that's like, hey, I can't go out and, you know, hang out anymore, you know, like the social life and might have to like slim down a little bit. But I guess my biggest advice is like, you have to just really like pace yourself, make the time to do it. And the first step is really talking to people. Don't even look at job descriptions because it's going to overwhelm you because there's
you'll talk yourself out of it.
Yeah, there's no one-on-one direct. Like also, y'all, you got to turn off that noise on LinkedIn. And like all these people getting roles, like yay for them, that's amazing. Some people's paths are, you know, different, right? I had a friend, she literally called me, we talked on January and she got a new job in like early March. That's great. That's amazing. I have friends that took 3 years to pivot out of higher ed. And so I would just don't yes, get excited when you see like, hey, I got a new job, then like, feel free to reach out to them because I think what happens too is when people are willing to give back. They want to talk about their journey. They want to help others. And that's so important because it makes the job search just less intimidating. And that once again, like I said, the more you talk about it with people, the more you can see yourself manifesting for yourself. But you got to just pay attention to like your energy level because it is exhausting, especially working full time. And that's the big reason why I did leave because I had the support and the financial resources at the time to leave. Because I also had enough. I was like, I can't. I could not do it. But I know people could do it with families and working full time. It's just your route's going to be a little different. So I think, and also like you have to also kind of like give yourself like milestones. So I gave myself like, what does 6 months look like? What happens if like I don't do any, like nothing, I don't get any traction in like 9 months? You have to look at your strategy of your job search. Like I refined my job strategy probably 3 times during my search.
Okay, hold on, don't.
Yes, I'm not.
Okay.
I looked
Okay.
down because I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not gonna do anything.
Okay. First of all, Shannon has a great question. Shout out to Shannon. What's up, fellow first gen professional? Shannon saying, I'm wondering what the difference is between EdTech and education management companies. Also, this is Shannon. I'm interested in landing a career/success coaching position remotely at a company like General Assembly, Bright Horizons, Stride, etc. Any thoughts on how to leverage your transferable skills, network, and gain professional development or certification coursework to land a role?
Oh, that's great questions. Okay, what I could share, okay, I'm not super sure. And also, Janet, feel free to drop your knowledge in the chat as well, because I know you work in tech. The way I look at it is there's EdTech. Okay, back it up. Let's take EdTech out of your site. There's B2B and B2C. Business to customer, business to business. So my company is actually an education management company. There's a lot of extra stuff that's strategic. Yeah, there's a lot of extra stuff that my company talks about. So we actually work directly with businesses. So there are our actual customers. I believe in terms of like EdTech in general is like an umbrella, but then you gotta have to also know who are, at the end of the day, who are your clients, right? So then like General Assembly, I heard of Bright Horizons. I think actually they might be our competitor, but I'll double check that later. And then, so like General Assembly, they're like B2C, so they work directly with the consumers, like the students, right? So I think that's like the big difference.
Shannon's other question is about leveraging transferable skills, and I know we covered a lot of that in our last video too, but what would you add?
So I guess I'll share my screen.
Yeah,
so
yes.
This is my prelude to my LinkedIn. Okay, so what I did first, so before I didn't open my LinkedIn. I'll do in a second. So this is what I did first. I thought it would be helpful to show you all. This is my higher ed roles that I did before, right? So started off as a grad. I had 2 graduate assistantships and then became an RD, and then, traditional path, right? RD, and then assistant director. I was a short stint in conduct, and then 2 assistant director roles in res ed. And then I realized if I'm talking to people in other industries, ain't nobody gonna know what a res life coordinator is. Ain't nobody gonna, you know what I mean? Like, oh, assistant director, does that mean like you're like leadership C-level potentially, or maybe under C-level? No, I'm not. I'm like leadership team in my department, right? So you have to like really learn the terminology in your fields you're trying to go into and transfer it. Like, you're not lying on your LinkedIn, y'all. You are helping the reader, the target audience, understand what you're doing. Because really what it matters for them, they want to know what you did. A business title just kind of helps them. Okay, cool. So you were a program coordinator. Okay, what did you coordinate? And then your bullet points. You're a senior program manager. Okay, then what did you do? So in my last role at USF, I really leveraged my training background. So then my company, since we actually work with educational benefits, I leveraged being an employee experience kind of manager for my department at my previous institution, and leveraged that, helped them understand I was like a senior program manager, and this is the program I managed. Are y'all still there with me? Everyone, LT, you're good?
Oh yeah. I'll just put some things in the chat. Yes, I like how what I put in the chat was the takeaway. You said it so quickly. You do this a lot. You just throw it away, but it's so valuable. Learn the terminology in the field that you're interested in, and sort of reframe your title.
Yes, you got to reframe, and that I had to get over that hump, because at first I was like, I'm like, what are my colleagues going to say if they saw this? Which I think I only had one person ask me, but I think also they were trying to look as well, but leave the field, but I'm not going to ask them. And I said, oh, well, I just want to make my LinkedIn just more relevant if, other industries are, you know, are looking at my LinkedIn. Like, it wasn't like a big secret. I was like trying to hide I wasn't leaving, but I even told my manager, like, I'm not a res lifer. So like, I'm trying to do other things. It could still be in higher ed, but other things, you know, like that I could leverage my skills. So you have to really learn and understand in your industry you're trying to go to, what are, you know, the titles. If you're staying in like nonprofit, then I feel you could use like assistant director. I feel there's definitely those titles in like nonprofit, depending on the nonprofits you're in. But I know, like, I had a friend, she showed me her resume and I said, are you sure they'll know assistant director? And what she did was she looked at the company's websites and then saw assistant director titles. So that's, once again, you got to do your research, y'all.
Research, yeah.
You got to do your research. And then actually, so I was going to show you all. Oh, okay. One more thing too. So really quick, I made this little like graphic here where so there's like the technical versus non-technical. And I'm just showing this as an example of the technical skills I had to like learn and understand. So this top portion here are just, if anyone out there is, you know, interested in UX design, these are like the hard skills you will need to learn for the roles. But I really wanted to highlight, and this is actually advice I got from pretty much a lot of people, especially designers. In your interviews, you really want to leverage your soft skills, your essential skills. Design is 80% communication, y'all. It is not just going on a file and making things look pretty. So all of the skills I've been using in higher education, communication, collaboration, navigating ambiguity, y'all know that with COVID, with like crisis, all those things we're doing. So I just wanted to also just share, like y'all got skills. And if you haven't watched that video, please do our last video on transferable skills. We go more in depth into this. Are awesome. And then
show your LinkedIn.
I know, hold up. I am logging.
Cut it out. I was so proud of you when I saw this. And while Mel is queuing us up, I just want to admit that up until maybe just a year ago, I was LinkedIn agnostic at best, right? I wasn't even paying attention. But you see me there all the time, and I know how to leverage LinkedIn for show. And it's just a little bit crazy. Wait, where you go? Why you still looking your stuff up? Okay.
Yeah, here you go.
Because who put this in the chat? I think, was it Lindsay who said they were a bit nervous about LinkedIn? So I do have another video conversation coming up in July about LinkedIn, particularly how to leverage LinkedIn. So be on the lookout for that. But I'm only going to share my link on LinkedIn. So you got to follow me on LinkedIn to know when it is. All right, blow it up, Mel.
All right. That helpful. Sorry, my laptop is so low. That helpful? Bigger?
Can you do it bigger? Okay, that's better. If you could do one more, it'd be even better.
Okay.
I love how you did this.
What do you want me to show? Like, just walk me or
Well,
just talk through?
No. I mean, that's beautiful. I love that. But when you talk about your actual prior experience.
Oh, yes. Okay, so let's scroll down here. Okay.
Lindsay, I got you, Lindsay. I got you. But imposter syndrome is real on LinkedIn.
Okay, here, USF.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, break it down.
Well, this title changed so many times. And the reason why I changed it so many times, because it all depended on what I was applying for. So if I was doing like leadership development, I would do like senior program manager, leadership development. I also use like learner experience. I just it's a lot of it. It's like you have to test it out and see what traction you get. So for this role that I, landed with my company, I decided to use employee experience because that was a better umbrella way to communicate that I do have experience working with like employees directly and creating, I know it's kind of repetitive, y'all, but an experience for them. And then my bullet point.
Wait, Mel, wait.
Okay, go ahead. What you need?
No, people need to hear that. You said you changed it depending on what job you applied for.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
That could be a revelation for some people. Like, what? This was the job I had. I was director of first year experience. What you are doing is granting people permission to reframe and rephrase. And I think that is so powerful. And Shannon, I hope, I mean, I saw your note in the chat, but I hope this is like getting that buzz going in your head in terms of Mel saying, okay, what is helpful when you're doing your research is to look at the terminology, look at those titles of the places where you're headed and match it up on your application materials. And also you can adapt and change them over time.
Yes, your LinkedIn is iterative, y'all. It is not a one-stop done. It has I had to learn to give my LinkedIn TLC. And you also, so it was helpful for me to if you're wondering, where do you even come up with these positions? That's also those conversations I have with people really help, because in tech, a lot of companies like to just create positions. Some companies don't even know what they want, and then they'll just kind of use a generic job description, which is nothing bad. There's nothing bad about that. I think it's just you got to do your research, but also don't get so caught up on titles too. That's what I had to step back from as well, and just really focus on the bullet points. I think that the bullet points, I want whoever, whether it's a client, whether it's a company, I want them to see my skills. Not just what did I do, how did I do it, through what skills, and then also what are some metrics that I'm able to achieve.
No, I just thought that was so powerful that it's not just saying assistant resident director or assistant, director of residence life. It's a little bit sneaky, but I love it.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to point out too, once you're ready to start looking at job descriptions, then you gotta, it's so important to understand the job description. So another piece of advice I want to share with people is don't be afraid to hop on a call with people who are in that industry and hey, LT, there's this job description. Can you talk me through what that means? That's what I did with design. I sat down with people that are in the field, and they helped me understand kind of all this jargon. Because when I first started job searching, it was like learning a whole nother language. I did not understand. I still don't understand a lot of these big terminology, but that's okay, because A, you'll get there, and B, you have to really leverage your resources and your support system. So when I finally clicked for me, okay, in higher ed, the first one here, right? Just don't even look at UX. We all do this. We do focus groups. We do those end of the year surveys, y'all. I did all this work for this employee performance management process, pretty much is our new L&D training roadmap. That's what I did. We created a digital solution that summer. We created our first online training through Canvas, our learning and management system program. And then boom, here's my bullet point. It's not easy, y'all. I'm not saying it's going to come up out of nowhere. But what also helped me was after I talked to, people who left higher education, I also looked into LinkedIn for inspiration, and then helped me generate some ideas and get the creative juices going on, what my LinkedIn could look like.
Okay, so a very practical question. So since you on your LinkedIn and perhaps on your resume change your title, if someone were to do a reference check, did you give that person a heads up that the title has changed?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So before I left higher ed, I made sure, with my higher ed folks, they all knew my journey, and I said, hey, when they do reach out to you, this is the position that will be on my resume and on my whatchamacallit, at LinkedIn. But I actually didn't get to be honest, I didn't get my company didn't do a reference check. So they did a background check, which actually is probably a little more serious per se, but my company didn't do a reference check. So I was out in the clear, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. You should always have everything prepared. So whenever I made it to the final round, I always made sure I checked back with my references, asking them if they could still serve. here's my job description, and then here's my position title. And this is what I'll be doing, because you have to also help your references help translate what you're doing in your new role.
Yeah. Mel, believe it or not, we probably have like 15 minutes.
Oh my
left.
gosh. Okay,
So why don't we create space for people?
Yes.
I've been asking you all the questions. Thank you for those who put questions in the chat. But if you have other questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or raise your hand, or mute yourself, and Heather and Michael help us out with that. But we want to make sure that you get what you came here for. So please let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks all for listening. I was like, my gosh, it's like 3:15 Pacific already. Woo.
And as we're waiting for questions to come in, I also want to stress the process that you were talking about in terms of reaching out to people ahead of time. You said it implicitly, but it's worth stating explicitly. You said, yes, when you're ready to look at job descriptions, implies that you don't need to jump right to that, to looking at jobs. That can actually, talk about imposter syndrome, that can really crush you a little bit.
Oh, totally. It made me think about like, oh, I'm not ready for this. Like, this is like, I don't even, like, how would I even know how to speak on my experiences? So then I would focus on going back to how to manage your time. I think that's where you want to do milestones, like spend like 2 months, per se, meeting people, reaching out. Even what I did, I even just like, I combed through people's LinkedIn's of people, let's say like, I couldn't get a hold of them, but I just looked on their LinkedIn. So just at least I was understanding, how they made connections, grab a journal. I created a journal just for job search. So whether that's a Google Doc, pen and paper is my thing. So you have to really like, think about it in small bites. Don't try to do everything all at once, because it's going to burn you out. And my other piece of advice is your goal is to be 1% better every day. Because if you double down on like the knowledge, understanding who is in the field, what they're doing, you're doing kind of this like foundational work first, it's going to pay off like later. And so, oh my God, hi Helen. Oh my God, or Helene's here. Oh my gosh, crazy. Sorry.
Okay, another question, Mel. So in addition to giving your references a heads up and, about your job pivot, what do you recommend in terms of how often should you be in touch with your references about job interviews or career paths, or sharing your updated resume, like for each new job interview, or what was your strategy like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I feel like, okay, so mine's maybe a little bit untraditional, because then my kind of references change throughout, because then I picked up more UX kind of like references per se. But I think it's always best just to like give them like a quick heads up, whether that's text, and just say like, even like telling them, hey, like I just got like my first screener. It's just good to know, like, because your references should be your biggest allies. These people should not just be people that like, oh, I'm just gonna put you as a reference, and maybe, and then that's it for them. Maybe you are the type of person to compartmentalize that. But I had to be really strategic on my references, for post higher ed, because these are the people I'm really like feel comfortable being vulnerable to. But also it depends on your comfort level, right? So I would say, if it's people that they're like also really like you're in your circle, it would be great to say, hey, like I got like a first round, I made it to, like the final round. They're going to be like calling you, right? Or I would even do, like when I created my portfolio, I actually sent out like a really big email to like my friends and family. And my references were on there too. And just say, hey, like this is like my new portfolio I created. I'm going to be job searching now. So it kind of just depends on your comfort level. But if you're feeling really good about a company and you're really like, oh my gosh, like I'm really excited about this, it's better to kind of give them early in advance, because you know how like higher ed, the cycles of the school year is. And also just know with reference checks and texts, I've done a couple for other people that put me as a reference. They're really short calls, they're like 15 minutes. they're not this like hour long or like, you know, higher ed, y'all. We got a PDF that's like 15 questions. I got 3 questions for 2
And I
records.
had none.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah. So I wouldn't super stress like about, remember, like different industry, they do different things. But I wouldn't necessarily stress off of like, just keep them in the loop, the best way you want them, you know, to be in your life.
Okay, so Danielle has a great question about salary. And she asked, how do you balance? She says the advice she's heard is that, although it's not advice, I guess, but the conventional wisdom is that if you're transitioning to a new industry, be prepared to take a pay cut. False. How do you balance being a relative beginner in this new industry, but not having your experience undervalued and being paid fairly? Mel, please talk about the salary. I think I might even have a screenshot of me and you talking about your salary.
Yeah, you probably do. So Danielle, everyone else out there, you're not a beginner. And that's what society is telling you. I had to remind myself, I'm not a beginner. For me, my story is I've been designing, I mean, Janet, once again, help me understand this. I've been designing like experiences in the physical world. Now I'm just in the digital world. So whatever you're doing, whether you're copywriting in the higher ed, because I know that's like your forte, what it is, you're literally just like turning like the corner 20 degrees and entering into another door. So for me, when I did my job search, I made it very clear, I am not a beginner. I made it very clear, I come from almost 15 years of experience designing XYZ. And I am now just being a new product, I am like a new product designer. I guess technically I'm considered like a junior mid-level. What does that even mean? Like, once again, isn't really these business titles and job titles don't really mean anything. Well, personally for me, because I just want to do like really good work. And when it came down to salary, yes, I had said, because I had got a 10 grand increase from the base salary they offered. And, part of me was like, oh, I wish I just got like the extra 5 grand. Cause you got to think about healthcare, right? Like I didn't think about the benefits piece, but that's a whole, I think we're going to another tangent.
Oh, you think it's too fat. What are you talking about?
Yeah, sorry. So what it was when I got the job offer, I had asked for a 10K increase, because you also have to understand what's in the market. Like
a 10K increase from what, Mel?
From the base salary they offered you.
Okay.
Yes, so the base salary, and I was like, that's cute. I would like to offer, I'm looking more in this range. So then I, asked for a 10K increase, and then he said, cool. But I just wasn't like, oh, I just asked for it. I wrote up a little rationale, and it said, this is the pay based off of location. This is in the industry of San Francisco, Bay Area. Plus also I have 13 years of working directly in higher education. So that is, you want to make sure you're prepared. You want to make sure you have a number in mind. I feel that's a whole like another conversation we could go into. However, Danielle, going back to your question, like you are not a beginner. There's this whole narrative out there, like you may get a pay cut. I mean, I was willing to get a pay cut if need be, but also you have to also look at the market and the trends of your industry. And I was like, at one point I was like, nah, I can't. I was like,
okay.
Yeah,
no, we're going to make it really plain for the people without giving the actual salary. Okay. What's the difference between the salary you made at USF and the salary you're making now? What's the amount difference?
Oh,
what you made at USF and what you're making now.
I'm really bad at math. Hold up, I shouldn't have got this.
Because otherwise, people are going to think that you made a 10% increase.
Okay, it's about 40 grand difference.
Say it again.
40K difference.
More than what you made before.
Yeah,
that's what the people need to hear.
Yes, 40K. Sorry, y'all. 40K. And once again, yes, the housing. But I'm gonna be real, my salary was the same as people in my school that did not have the housing too. So you can imagine empathizing with folks out there who have to also pay for your apartment off campus per se. But yes, and so now in my, I have this 40K increase. And then that's what I'll use to leverage in my next role whenever that comes. Yes. Wait, I'm looking at the chat, Danielle.
Yeah. No, we're good. Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's why I said we just needed to make it
Yes.
explicit.
Thank you for bringing me back to earth, because I get really stuck in the details sometimes, but yes.
Okay,
Oh, and the
okay.
bonus. Yes, there's a bonus too. So y'all know in higher ed, we get an annual bonus of what is it, like 2%, maybe 3% top. And in some tech companies, not all tech companies, there is something called a sign up bonus. And then there's like an annual bonus. So then for my company, you're able to get up to 15% of your salary based off of like your metrics and your performance. My company did not do a sign up bonus. A difference between those two, the sign up bonus, like let's say I work for Chase Bank and your sign up bonus is 10K. The expectation is that you work your first year, you complete out that first year, and then you get your 10K. If you leave before that 10K, you have to pay the rest back. So I was actually not super keen on looking for positions with like sign up, because you just never know what's going to happen. But you want to also just make sure too, like these benefits are great, but I don't want to chase after them. That makes sense. Like I know sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't, like I want to say and do well my first year, but also my end goal should not just, it's an incentive, but you also never know what happens to a company with like financially, which is like a whole nother topic we could talk about. You want to make sure you do your research about the company's financial situation as well. And don't be afraid to ask during your interviews, like what is even like the business model for your company as well. And then stock options. Yes. So definitely stock options. I think we talked about this in another, maybe there's equity.
The benefits one.
Yeah, the benefits one. There's equity, there's RSUs. My company actually isn't public. So we don't have any stock options for right now. However, my company does have like opportunity where if you want to go back to school, they'll pretty much like pay for your tuition, which is like a really cool deal.
Pay money back?
Yeah, so that's what I learned about sign-up bonuses, is that if you don't complete your first year, you have to pay whatever.
Oh, that's if you don't complete. Oh,
yeah.
And it depends on the situation. Everybody doesn't have the same thing.
Yes.
Don't let that unnerve you or anything like that. Yeah.
Yep. And then how did you earn up to 15%? So 15% is the Shannon, that's like the company-wide baseline. Every year employees are have an opportunity to get a 15% bonus based on their performance.
Yeah, same in my organization too. Okay, Mel, that was amazing. I think it was so helpful that you demystify so much of the process in terms of like your discernment process, in terms of how you approached it, and sort of delaying and what sort of, like you said, setting a foundation for yourself. I'll do a quick commercial, and maybe Heather can help me out with the link. But the organization I work for, Career Launch, actually has a curriculum that helps students with these things that Mel was talking about. So this idea of going on LinkedIn, reaching out to people to have a career conversation. What do you say when you reach out to someone? How long do you wait before you follow up? So if this is something you want to bring to students, holler at me, and we can talk about what we do at Career Launch. However, the four of us, and we still don't have a name for ourselves yet, are so excited to provide this pro bono opportunity to professionals. So that's the series that we've been doing here. Mel, I just want to thank you one more time. There's just so like I said, so much that you shared. I'll let you close us out here with the minute we have remaining, and want to thank everyone for listening in today. And we encourage you to please share this video and this information with everyone. Danielle, of course, we've discussed doing a podcast, but Michael said we have to let it be organic, and so we're not there yet. All right, Mel, close us out.
Awesome, y'all. Sorry, I coughed. What'd you say? I'm kicking.
Oh, I just said close us out.
Yeah. Y'all are brilliant people. Remember, my best tip is you gotta like find your community, find your support. Don't be afraid to talk about these things to other people. And the biggest piece of advice if I could talk to myself August of 2020, Mel, my advice to myself is leverage your experience, really lean on your experience. Mel, you're not starting over. You're not just starting from, nothing. You have so much to build off of. And it's also about learning what your story is. And so keep practicing, conversations with people, because you'll get there. You'll get there the more you talk about it, and the more you'll be walking to a new set. It's a new set of your skin, right? And you said your new set of coats, your new set of clothes you're gonna wear. So we got you. Thank you all for coming. Stay tuned for event 5, sundown sometime, and then I'll pass it off to anyone else. Heather?
Yeah.
Okay.
All good.
Y'all rock.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Connect with us on LinkedIn. Y'all are amazing.
Great
Thank
job,
you.
Mel. Great job,
Bye.
LT.
Woohoo.